So then I talked to the BUET professors. I told them to give me a objective analysis. Waste to energy is not listed in the EU green list of projects anymore. Lower your standard. Because other countries of the world have lowered their standard. I said, that's fine, I'll lower my standard. But we need to start with the process. And the Chinese air experts were really helpful in laying down a preliminary steps for us to follow. China has not only invested in huge projects in their country, they have also shown how problems of pollution can be tackled. And when China was a country often mentioned for pollution, now the scenario has changed. They are being referred as a country where solutions have been practiced and have become successful. For example, the air pollution management model of Beijing is something that is often referred to by countries that have extremely polluted air like us. Although I'm not an economist, but I can see that the country needs investment. It needs investment not only in mega projects, but in sectors where you can generate employment. And I've been also talking to the Chinese ambassador whether there is any way that we can have a fishery processing unit here in Bangladesh that will create generation for our people. When we talk about sustainability, all projects in Bangladesh have extensive feasibility studies. And the look of the feasibility studies will make you tired. They are often so voluminous that nobody has the time to go through every line that's written there. Perhaps that is why they make it so voluminous. Because I am a lawyer, and when I used to argue my case, and I had strong cases, the opposition, who would have weak cases, will make their claims, their replies, very voluminous, so that we get that lethargy in us not to read those. Because they don't have a case, they give documents that are totally irrelevant. So I had the fortune or misfortune of going through some of the feasibility studies that when we were asking for those, not as part of the government, but as part of the civil society, the government would always refuse to give. So now when I read the feasibility report, I know that one can make it less voluminous, more focused, more pointed, and more pragmatic in terms of what actions need to be done to make a project feasible. We do have national laws, we do have national standards, and any investor, be it China or not, they have their own standards to follow in making an economic intervention feasible. Regrettably, because of weak governance here in Bangladesh, investors also take opportunity of the of our lack of strength in enforcing law. We are also reluctant because we think in majority of the cases that investment first and environment later. And in my Bella days, I used to hear, look at China. They have first developed and now they are tackling their environmental problem. So we have to first develop, ruin everything, and then start thinking about environmental sustainability. Even for China, this has changed. It is in every development project taking care of its environment. So I think the very psyche of our country, that we should follow the Chinese path of first developing and then protecting, should change because China itself has changed it. And there are certain damages that are irreversible. Even if you want to invest for sustainability, you can't do it because the damage was really huge. I think one very important test of sustainability is people's acceptance of a project. It is not about how you tick against CO and DO. It is also about how people accept development, and that is why, in addition to objective environmental impact assessment, objective social impact assessment, people's involvement is very crucial. One way of tackling weak governance is to get people involved, and also to ensure that there is no double standard. So what you don't do in your part of the world, please don't do it in our part of the world, because our law is different. The other point that I don't know how to put that in diplomatic words, but it's like not taking advantage of a regime that is not supported by the people. Because in the long run, if you see the example of Sri Lanka, all the blame were put on the investor, that it is the investor who did the wrong, without pointing the finger to the government that was then in power, that they haven't done their homework properly, that they haven't done the assessment properly. Of course, we have standards, but if you as investor have better standards, and you know that our standards will not be able to save it, it's very, very much possible that you can talk to the government to improve the standards. I give you one example. In the Amin Bazar area, where we have this landfill, there is an interest to convert that particular landfill into a waste to energy scheme. Now the first demand is lower your standard, because other countries of the world have lowered their standard. I said, that's fine, I'll lower my standard. But tell me, who would ensure that the burning is efficient and toxic materials are not coming out? Because monitoring is a problem in Bangladesh. And there have been so many feasibility studies, so many joint analysis. A very basic thing, that you have to provide 3,000 tons of dried waste, 3,000 or 2,100, I've forgotten. So the figure is not the main issue here. The amount of waste that we have to supply, we just don't generate that much of waste. So we all are committed to that project, and in the contract we have written that if they can't perform, they get fined. If we can't supply the waste, we get fined. And we simply can't supply the waste, so we get fined. There was feasibility study, there was environmental impact assessment, all of it was done. And it was stamped as a sustainable, as a feasible project. It is not. So then I talked to the BUET professors. I told them to give me a objective analysis. Waste to energy is not listed in the EU green list of projects anymore. However, we have realities to deal with. We have to get rid of the volume of waste we have accumulated in Amin Bazar in Matwai. Everywhere you go from Dhaka, in any highway, you see waste piled up. So we have to find a solution. And I'm not saying an absolute no to waste to energy. I'm saying that you have to follow the standard. And we all have to know that it's a very congested, populated area. If you do the burning in Amin Bazar and the burning is not efficient, it will flow from Amin Bazar to Dhaka in the winter, which will further aggravate your air pollution. You can't afford to do that. Yes, you need to address the waste problem. Yes, you need to have more energy, but that does not mean you do it at the cost of air pollution. This is where caution from both the parties are required. Boropukuria is actually not a happy scenario. If you go to Boropukuria and if you go to the community people who have much less power to bargain and negotiate, or rather they are powerless to bargain and negotiate, you see that their water that they are drinking has been impacted, the air has been impacted. And we need to invest to improve the situation there. To make an investment sustainable, there has to be another additional conditionality. That if there is any violation, if there is non-compliance, then the community that suffers should have access to a process that will give them justice. Because the government is very concerned to see big roads being constructed. But in the process, if something goes wrong and the communities suffer, and because it's a mega project, you can't even go to the judiciary. The judiciary will turn you down because its governments much prefer the project. Then it is not sustainable. Then end of the day, the investment will not be termed as a good investment. We have this Padma bridge, and I myself take advantage of that. But the fact remains that because of the Padma bridge, Jajira is facing worse erosion of any time. People of Jajira won't be able to come to Intercontinental to share with us their grievances. But since I am in charge of the Ministry of Water Resources, I see that this is something totally unpredictable. The river training was done, it was done properly, but nobody anticipated that nature follows its own rule. So huge erosion is taking place in Jajira, and villages after villages may get washed if we don't invest a substantial amount of money to develop permanent protection. This was totally, something that no one could predict. As much as I am willing to work with investors in Waste to Energy program, I would like to see that the environmental impact assessment, social impact assessment, something that's never done in Bangladesh, are evaluated by objective people. You can't solve every problem. I understand. If you go for a huge investment, there will be some problems here and there. But if the problems take the nature of 2-3 villages getting washed out, you have to be careful on that. I'm very, very, very thankful to the Chinese government for instantly sending their experts to help me out with air pollution. But there is no instant solution to this problem. It will take at least 10 years to have better quality air, but if you work persistently, then in 2-3 years, you will be able to control the pollution. Controlling the pollution and having pure air are not necessarily the same thing. Controlling the pollution is the first step, and then eventually with your petroleum standard being upgraded, your refinery condition being upgraded, you can go there. On the Tista project, it is something people demand. So when I first brought the feasibility study from the shelves, I myself had few questions. So I requested the Chinese government to facilitate one expert meeting and to take the project idea, the feasibility report, to the community people in their language. I'm not translating it into Bengali, but to get someone who can speak people's language. So there were 4 to 5 community consultations. People wanted, people also have given their suggestion. So we have noted down their suggestion, annexed it with the feasibility report, and when we submitted that to the Chinese government, we have submitted it with the people's opinion, saying that in course of implementation, these points will have to be considered. So I know that if you make your case clearly on sustainability, investors will listen to you. I think to clean up the Buriganga river, we need some ninja technique. Without ninja technique, you will not be able to solve it. Because you have mercilessly been polluting this river for God knows how many years. And we still continue to do it. Yes, there can be enforcement action against the dyeing factories in Shampur. There have been drives before, but they did not sustain. Because there is a demand for their project and they continue to pollute it. Now, one has to ensure that all the industries operate the ETPs. With 4 magistrates in hand, it gets difficult, but we have, say for example, there is an eviction, there is a drive, and we manage to shut them down. For how long will we be able to shut them down? They'll make a comeback because they supply the raw material to the garment sector. But on Buriganga also, I've got very pragmatic and good suggestions from the Chinese experts, and we are actually developing a joint working group. The TOR has been finalized, and the joint working group will have their meeting where we will keep Buriganga as an agenda, because I really think that only Chinese intelligence will be able to help us in that regard. For countries like Bangladesh, another test of sustainability is getting the support on concessional terms and allowing us flexibility not only in payment but also in ensuring mid-term reviews of projects, seeing where we are going right and where we are not going right, so that we can accordingly change the project component. The last point I would like to make is, for any investor, for their own reputation, because whichever government supports it, it is actually supporting the people of a country with the money that is generated by the people of another country. So when it is money of people being invested and investment is being done for the benefit of another community, it's very important to note that transparency is maintained. We understand that when we negotiate, we can make everything public. But the semi-concluded documents should be shared, and no autocratic regime should be supported to stay in power for too long by selling investment for mega projects. Because autocratic rulers don't listen to the people, and that is why they are autocratic. But when you invest, or when I invest in the name of my people, for the sake of my people. So we have to ensure that the democratic processes of debating, discussing, disclosure, involvement are all ensured in an investment that we want to stamp as good investment. We would be really looking forward to partnership with China in the energy sector. The interim government has given a target of 30% renewable by 2030. That is very much doable. All the government offices have been instructed to start changing their power consumption and generation model, and they have been instructed to start having solar panels on their roof. So with small steps, if we, even in reaching the 2030 target of 30%, we would definitely need Chinese support, and we are thankful to China for helping us with the windmills in Shirajganj, and with the envious success that China has made in cleaning up its air, in switching to renewable. I'm sure we'll have a lot to learn from them. So thank you very much. I thank the organizers for inviting me here. I'm sorry for being late, but I really hope that we will have a very successful discussion for the rest of the program. Thank you.